Okay, so what if the language of our most cutting-edge science and our most ancient spiritual texts are, well, what if they're actually telling the exact same story? Today, we're diving into a really fascinating perspective that tries to build a bridge between those two worlds, all through a concept called the quantum Christ. The whole idea we're exploring today really kicks off with this one big question. Is our traditional way of thinking about God, or the divine, just too small for the world we live in now, with everything we've discovered about the universe? This is the central question that really drives this whole way of thinking. And that question, it's not just for show. It leads directly to the search for a faith that actually makes sense in the 21st century. The ideas we're about to get into, they're born from a very real desire to find a spiritual language that doesn't just tolerate science, but is actually made richer by it. So the core idea here is that for a lot of people, some of the old religious boxes can feel a little tight, especially when you put them right next to the mind-bending stuff we're learning from quantum physics. And that's pushing people to look for a bigger picture, one where science and faith aren't fighting, but are maybe just two different languages trying to describe the same incredible reality. So, how in the world do you bridge that gap? Well, it starts by proposing a kind of new map for reality, one where the universe isn't just a bunch of random accidents, but is actually running on a divine code. Okay, so the first big piece of the puzzle is this idea of quantum dimensions. Now, hold on, this isn't sci-fi stuff with alternate universes. It's more of a framework to think about spiritual realities that are coexisting with us right now, just kind of vibrating at a different frequency. Like radio waves that are all around us but we can't see. And that's really the perfect way to think about it. Just like the Wi-Fi signal that's filling the room you're in right now, these spiritual dimensions are described as being right here, right now. Our five senses just aren't tuned to that particular channel. Next up, we've got something called the toroidal field. You've actually seen this shape before, even if you don't know the name. It's this dynamic, self-powering donut shape that shows up everywhere in nature, from the magnetic field of an atom all the way up to a galaxy. Here, it's used as this powerful metaphor for how divine energy works, not as a top-down command, but as this constant recycling flow that creates and sustains everything inside of it. So you take these ideas, the extra dimensions, the energy fields, and they all build up to this bigger concept of a coded matrix. The idea is that the universe isn't just random chaos. It's more like a living, breathing tapestry that's woven with divine information, a kind of blueprint that's embedded into the very fabric of space and time. Now, this is where it gets really specific, and honestly, kind of mind-blowing. The source material takes this idea of a divine code and makes a pretty fascinating claim. It points to the ancient Hebrew name for God, YHVH, and suggests that the numerical values of these letters, 10, 5, 6, 5, actually correspond to fundamental ratios we see in creation. It's proposed that this divine signature is literally embedded in everything, from the very structure of our DNA to the rhythm of our own heartbeats. Okay, so with this whole quantum map of reality laid out, where does Christ fit into all this? This next part is all about how this perspective totally reframes our understanding of this central figure, taking him from a person in history to a force of cosmology. And this brings us to a really huge shift in perspective. The traditional view, as we know, often centers on Jesus as a historical figure, a man who lived and died in a specific time and place. But this quantum view expands on that massively. It presents Christ as a multidimensional being, the actual organizing intelligence, the sustaining force of all reality, who exists across all dimensions and all of time at once. And proponents of this view point to scripture to back this up, like this verse from Colossians. That phrase, "in him all things hold together," is taken very literally here. The idea is that Christ is the universal glue, the cohesive force that keeps the entire coded matrix of the universe from flying apart. And it's not just abstract ideas. They also look at specific biblical events through this new lens. Take the Transfiguration, for example. In this view, that's a moment where the veil was just pulled back. It's seen as Christ's multidimensional nature becoming visible, as he's interacting with figures from the past, Moses and Elijah, while being in the present with his disciples. It was like a glitch in the normal matrix of space-time. Okay, so this is all fascinating stuff, but what does it mean for us, right? If this divine code is all around and inside of us, how do we actually access it? This next part is all about how we as individuals can consciously plug into this quantum reality. The key concept here is something called spiritual DNA, And no, we're not talking about biology here. It's a powerful metaphor for the divine blueprint that this source claims is encoded inside every single one of us. It's our built-in connection to the divine, our spiritual identity that's just kind of dormant, waiting to be switched on. So, how do you activate it? Well, the idea is laid out in this three-step path. First, you consciously choose to align with that toroidal field of divine energy we talked about. Then, that very connection is what switches on our spiritual blueprint. And the result? It's suggested that this unlocks abilities that were there all along: deeper creativity, profound insights, and a whole new level of personal empowerment. This all sounds incredibly profound, I know. But what does it actually look like in the real world? How does thinking this way actually change your daily life? Let's dig into what it might mean to live a quantum faith. And this is really the most important part of this whole perspective. It's not meant to be just some cool theory you think about. It's offered up as a functional, practical framework for a new way of living, one that can fundamentally change how you interact with the world day in and day out. So, what might that actually look like? Well, the source suggests things like prayer that feels more powerful because you start to see it as you directly interacting with the coded matrix of reality. It points to unlocking new levels of creativity by tapping into that divine flow. And maybe most importantly, just fostering a constant, powerful awareness that you are connected to something so much bigger than yourself. At the end of the day, the goal here isn't just about having a few cool spiritual moments. It's about a complete and total transformation. As the source material puts it, it's a process that aligns our entire being, spirit, soul, and body, with this bigger, multidimensional divine reality. So we'll leave you with the question that really sits at the heart of all this. What if the universe is fundamentally more connected, and we are fundamentally more capable than we have ever allowed ourselves to imagine? Thanks for joining us on this exploration.